All right, what's going on, team? Hope you guys are all having a wonderful day. So in this video, we're going to be covering how to use trend lines. And there's two types of trend lines. There's angular trend lines, like we see here and here. And then there's horizontal trend lines, like we see here. So these are mainly used to identify potential locations or levels of support and resistance, which is exactly what our next video will be about, support and resistance levels. So don't worry if you don't completely understand it in this one. We're going to discuss it in more detail in the next video, but let's just look at some simple examples here. So there's two ways that I draw trend lines. One is using the extremities of a level, meaning the highest or lowest points of a level, and we draw them to other highest or lowest points of a level. And this one's actually drawn a little bit off, right? You really want these 2 points to touch, and you need at least 2 points to connect for a valid trend line. And in general, it's nice to have as many as possible to know that the trend line is a valid trend line, right? And we can also extend this. Let's see, where do I extend it? I haven't used this tool in a while. I think it's like, here we go. And we can see just how well respected this one trend line, which is just connecting this point to this point and then extending it. So some potential trades you could take off this after drawing this, right? You watch price move around, and then it comes back up. It tries to break out above it. It fails, it retests it, and it moves down. That would be a good point to sell. And then likewise, as it comes back to it here and here, another potential point to sell. And then a good potential time to buy might be on these retests of it, upon which losing it, this is invalidated. So again, as discussed in the last video, not every good setup is going to work in our favor, but it can show us some potential good entries. Likewise, here's another one down here on the bottom of this move, and this is connected between this low and this low, and it gives us 1, 2, 3, 4 good buying opportunities at this low. And keep in mind, guys, we will not just be using this 1 point of information to determine if we're going to buy or sell something. We don't just use trend lines, but it can be a very helpful tool. And then we can see here, we come back up, we retest the upper end of this trend line from months ago. Might be a good time to take some profits if you bought these previous tests. And then here, once you close above it, that could be a good time to maybe add to your existing buys. And then you come up, you have a little bit of an uptrend like we discussed in the last video. And then here, after we move away from this level, we can connect this point to this point, and now we have a horizontal trend line, which could indicate a previous or a potential level of resistance or support, in this case, resistance. And then when we come back up to this level, we tap into it. And so until closing above this trend line now, we might want to be taking profits into this region, like here, for example. And then here we could draw a couple more trend lines, honestly, from this extremity to this one. Right, so this could be a good sell as we break below and come back up to this trend line. And likewise, we could draw another one from this lower high to this lower high. And then as we start to break above and consolidate on top of it, that could be a chance to buy, take some profits into this range high, as well as this upwards trend line here. Okay, and then we're kind of fiddling around it, and we break back below this old resistance level. So now might be a good time to close longs and wait and look to take some more longs as we break back above this level. Which looks like here's your first opportunity. maybe you look to be on the buy side. And you close back below, maybe you look to exit. And you break back above, maybe you look to get back in. And it looks like this one actually works out pretty nicely. And then the trend begins. And again, keep in mind, guys, these are just examples. We would never just use a trend line as justification for a trade. I'm just showing how we could potentially use these to give us a better edge on our trades. And I don't think I had some more over here actually. So I guess we can look at these. Here's another trend line connect from the top of this move to the top of this next consolidation move. And keep in mind, guys, there are an infinite number of trend lines. You know, you could throw one amongst these highs. You could throw one from this high to this high, but they're not all going to be useful. And sometimes too many trend lines is not going to help us. And I much rather focus on horizontal levels than angular levels, but to each their own. You know, it'll be up to you to decide if you want to make use of these angular trend lines or not. I personally do not make use of them that much, but they can be very helpful for identifying trends. For example, in this situation, you're in a bigger picture downtrend, which looks something like this, right? Lower highs and lower lows. And inside of that, we have this little uptrend that begins, right? And we can draw this little uptrend line at the top and this uptrend line at the bottom. And before we actually make a lower low, we get a little indication upon this trend line break that our trend might be lost. Okay, and this could be a good time to maybe exit your position and look to position on the downside, which begins right after this. Okay, now let's see if this trend line from November 2021 and March 2022 is of any use later on. So here we break out above it and retest it with a nice reaction right off it. Maybe that's a good buying opportunity. And it looks like it was. And it's always crazy to me how one arbitrary line from years prior can have an effect on price action years later. Actually wild to me. But we can use these to help with our entries, our exits, our stop losses, our invalidations, all that good stuff. And more often than not, we will use them in combination with some other techniques to try and get the best edge on the market that we can. So we'll talk about this more in the next video, support and resistance levels. So I will see you guys there. Peace out.